Hey friends. So many of you may know that I tend to keep a really positive lens on my platforms, on my YouTube, my Instagram, my TikTok. I tend to take a pretty generalized topic and boil it down into a really small, simplified form. I try to make my delivery kind of hopeful, if I do say so myself. But today I wanted to take a bit of a different approach. I wanted to have a more serious tone, a more serious lens. Often when I'm laying in bed at night and I'm scrolling on my phone and I should be reading a book or going to sleep, I tend to really internalize and think a lot about how I feel about some of the more darker aspects about life. To be perfectly honest with you, because I respect you as a viewer and a person, I'm really good at putting on the sunshiny front. That's something that I genuinely do bring, especially in the daytime. However, at nighttime, I'm almost the opposite. I'm quite serious. I can be quite pessimistic and even lacking a lot of hope and faith for humanity and even for myself. I feel like it's important for me to verbalize this and be honest about this because I don't want to come across as a two-dimensional person. I don't want to come across as somebody that papers over the harder topics of life. Something that kind of brought this up in me today was I was driving along today and I do delivery driving once a week as like a side gig for the time being. And I have the pleasure of getting to deliver to really fancy houses in fancy neighborhoods. That's actually one of the things I love most about doing this job. I get to discover new, beautiful, luxurious, rich places in the vast area where I live. I find homes very inspiring. I'm not going to do a whole story time on this, but basically, I grew up pretty poor. I would say I don't want to make it sound over dramatic, but my parents always made sure that we had food and we had clothes, even though we were on welfare when I was a kid, and we did have to live with my grandparents for quite a few years. We struggled as a family for a really long time. Fast forward, my dad's gone back to school and he's gotten his master's, and then he's gotten a fantastic job that brought us out to California, and our life has gotten significantly better ever since. So shout out and thank you to my dad and to my mom for making that happen for us. I think something that really stuck with me somewhere in my childhood was I would go to friends' houses and they always had more toys than me. They always had newer clothes than me. They had their house. So they always just seemed to have like more, right? And on top of that, we moved a lot when I was a kid. We moved frequently, and I remember we always rented. That was a word I definitely heard a lot, is rent. My parents own their house now, which is really awesome. Yeah, I don't know why, but for some reason like the idea of a home and a house was really important to me. So anyway, back to my delivery driving. I get to see these beautiful houses, and I try to frame it through a positive lens where I feel inspired and empowered, and I get to be shown all this beautiful architecture and all these beautiful areas to live in, and it broadens my horizons for manifesting like my dream home, right? I really struggle with this for a few reasons. I can't ignore that I live in California and I don't have a college degree. Taxes are exorbitant. Minimum wage is not nearly enough to cover basic living expenses. Everything's getting more expensive. Property taxes here are insanely expensive. I can't ignore all these blaring signs in front of me in my dreams that I can't afford to have my dream. And I know that sounds really bleak. That's the boulder that I'm pushing up the hill. I can't afford to have the things that I see everyone around me have. And I'm sorry, it makes me a little bit emotional. And I even feel a little bit silly for being emotional about it because I am so lucky that I have clothes and I have a car and I have a job, multiple jobs, and I have food to eat. And I do live in a beautiful area. And I'm really thankful that I've been able to continue to like carve out ways for me to keep my life the way it is. It's very beautiful and I'm very blessed in many ways. I used to cry on my delivery route because it would get to a point where I would look at these houses and think, oh, they're so lucky. They're so lucky. How did they get that? They must be so blessed. They must be so smart. They must be so well connected. They must have done X, Y, and Z right. They must really deserve it more than me, And then when you start spiraling in sad thoughts like that, in kind of like despair or like lack of hope, I guess, I'll speak for myself. I tend to then try to go to a place where I feel a little more empowered. And the next emotion above depression or sadness is anger, because it is more empowered to be angry than it is to be sad and hopeless. So my brain will sometimes think really pessimistic thoughts like, well, that person probably works a job that has really bad environmental impacts, or it probably screws over a lot of people, or that person probably just married somebody who was wealthy and didn't have to work for it. And I know I'm not alone in this. I know a lot of people think like that. And thankfully, I have the perspective to get out of my own perception, and I understand that that's my brain's way of trying to protect me. My brain sees that somebody has something that I truly, truly want, and the formula seems to be like they got it because they deserve it more than me. And in order to protect myself from that potential reality being true, I tell myself the story that they're scummy and they're bad and they obtained it through bad or immoral ways. Now, luckily, I know now to not really take that too personally and not take those thoughts to heart. I understand it's just my ego's way of trying to protect me, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still hard to go about my life and the way that I've constructed it and the way that I feel like it has to be, and to wonder what I'm not doing right. I know that a big part of life is to be patient and to have trust and faith. And I know that those are not the only ingredients in order to obtain your dreams, your wishes, and your desires. However, it's an important component because you gotta be in it for the long game. That's something that I've seen and I know is the most steady route. You have to be in it for the long game. You have to be willing to grow and go through uncomfortable change. You have to be willing to do things differently than you thought and to adapt. And just because I don't have something now doesn't mean that I'll never have it. So, through doing the delivery driving for a while now, I have gotten to the point where I can just appreciate dream building with the homes and I don't take it too personally and I don't have to come up with some negative reason why somebody has a beautiful home and why I don't. Today, while I was driving, I had a thought come to me, and the thought was I actually wrote it down. It almost sounds like a mantra, actually, but what I wrote down was I don't need to lie, cheat, or steal in order to get what I desire, even though it feels futile, like I'll never get it. I'd rather have my honor and integrity than a beautiful house. I actually have a few other video ideas that I want to get into for why this mantra really sticks with me, but I'll save those videos for other days. I think it's really tempting to want to take shortcuts and want to take the easy way, quote unquote, or to try to do things in a kind of cold hearted, cutthroat way in order to get what you want. But there's just something in my heart that like doesn't have it. I just don't have it to really go through with the whole lying, cheating, and stealing to get what I want. And that's kind of like in many ways a freeing burden to drop from my shoulders, but also it's hard because the alternative is like, well, you may never get a house. And I have to decide that my honor and integrity is worth more than a material thing like a home, like a house. Because I can build a home in many ways. But yeah, it's just right now in this place, it doesn't feel possible. That doesn't mean that it's not totally possible somewhere else at a different point in time. So sorry, I didn't mean to like cry so much in this video, but that's something that really, really hits my heart super hard. It's like something about the house and the home. And I know I'm not the only one in that. And I really have some stories to share about desperate things I've seen people do to try to get homes, to try to get houses, to try to get all kinds of things. I've seen people do crazy things just to try to fulfill their needs and desires. I'll tell you if it ever works out for me, but I really just have a strong feeling like I can't do that. I can't go that route. I can't cheat. I can't lie. I can't steal. I just can't and I won't because I just know in my heart, like every time I have made mistakes or I have made poor choices, it just leads to unhappiness. It just leads to sadness. And at the end of the day, if you have nothing material in your life, it's so much better to have your self respect, to have your honor and your integrity and your word. I promise you it's going to lead you to much more happiness and fulfillment. So, yeah, I hope that you don't feel alone because you're totally not. And I hope that this gave you a more well rounded look into who I am and what I share with the world. I'm not all sunshine and rainbows, even though I'm really good at that. I am definitely a well rounded person, an equal and balanced person like all of us are. For how strong your light is, your dark can also be just as strong. And that's totally okay, and it's really beautiful, and I'm trying to become more brave at expressing all sides of myself with the world. It is playing it safe when I share a really easy and lighthearted topic with some hope and motivation and inspiration. It's easy when I share that with the world, and there's definitely value in that, and there's definitely a place for that, but I just want to like keep it real, and I'm trying to keep it even more real. I'm trying not to lie to myself, and I'm trying not to put on too much of a face for the world, because if I'd lie and say everything's fine, then I'm just going to keep getting what I've got. And yeah, I think it's okay once in a while to get a little bit teary eyed and talk about, like, oh yeah, I really wish I had a nice house. Because, like, that's been a narrative that's been shared with the previous generations. And it was like, oh yeah, you get a house, you get a job, you get a family. And I feel like my generation, for anybody that doesn't know, I'm like the tail end of millennial and the very beginning of Gen Z. I'm exactly on the line. Yeah, everybody in my generation understands that it's not for us. That narrative is dead. It's old. It's not true anymore. And we have to get really creative, just like here on My Creative Life. We have to get really creative and find other ways to live, survive, thrive, and create something for ourselves because we just do. Whether that's moving to a place where that dream is possible, or carving out new creative ways of living, or redefining what it means to have relationships, to have homes, to have houses, what your dream job looks like, what's important to you, and all that good stuff. So, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this little chat, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Remember to stay grounded, my friends.